How is life wherever you might be at this very moment? I wanted to talk about this subject about empathy fatigue and in the Black activism community. And I wanted to talk about that specifically because I'm always thinking about the sustainability or the longevity of the things that we do and the things that I do. I always think about how do I turn this into a journey, a marathon, rather than a sprint. And to be fair, I feel like I've gotten to that perspective in my own life because I realized early on that, okay, if you want things to last, you have to do them in a way that slowly makes it more of a part of your life rather than I'm just going to get this done and hope it's fixed or hope that, for example, even if you think about things like food or if you think about well-being and health, um, I I was lucky enough through some very challenging experiences able to learn how those things were more damaging. And I think I apply that also to my way of being engaged with the causes that are important to me and thinking about how do I engage with this and add to this from a place of longevity and from a place that is sustainable for me as a person. And even like when you look at this channel, it's a slow building channel. This is another word I've started to really proclaim and be like, that's good for me, like slow creation. I want to embrace the idea of slow creation. I feel like there's already so much content out there, and as a content creator, you might feel enslaved to the algorithm, or that you have to do this is what people are doing and what everybody's doing, and you have to be producing and putting out content. And I was like, okay, you could do that, but you could also take another system that works for you, that is more aligned, that's more humane, and less motivated by us becoming more machines rather than us being more engaged with our human and natural side. So for me, even with creation, I've tried to implement that idea. Like even with this channel, like I want to add knowledge to it and things of value, but I don't feel pressure to just pump out information. And if that means that it never grows, if that means that it never reaches what it needs to, as long as the things that are there make sense to me and they are true to my essence, and I'm not killing any part of myself to create them, I'll be happy. And like I said, I think the commitment I can really live with is at least once a month, and I'm going to try my best to live up to that. And if at some point I don't, it doesn't mean I've abandoned, I'm not coming back. I will, because this is also a part of me. It's not just something I do, it's a part of me. I love to share ideas with people, and this is the platform I created for that. Anyway, so going back to the subject of today, which is empathy fatigue in the Black activist community, or like people doing work and work that is important, but work that requires a lot of energy. And especially on top of that, you yourself being a person of color, living a Black experience, going through your own struggles, because we're not creating, or people do not create these, whether it's a book, whether it's a movement, whether it's an organization, whether it's a call to action. People seldom create this from a place of, oh, I'm just chilling and enjoying my life, nothing is wrong with my life, but you know what, let me start a little project, a little cause. I don't think that, like the people that inspire me the most and the people that I try to look up to, and the people that I am inspired by and who inspire my journey as well, are people whose way of activism, for me, I don't even think I could call it activism. It's like dedication to radical social change on issues particular to Blackness or African identity. There are people who, from their own identity, were challenged, from their own experiences, were challenged, and they were like, this issue is not just about me, this is a bigger issue, and I need to use what I'm good at or what I feel I have to bring that out and to share that, or at least share my opinion on that, and bring awareness in that way to the things that I've experienced, and I'm now aware that more people have experienced, and this is not just a unique experience, and I'm also aware I live in a system that's perpetuating these things that are happening to me. So all that to say that I feel like as people in the Black community who are dedicated to putting action and putting effort into making changes, positive changes for their community. It takes a lot of work. I've had the pleasure of being part of a social enterprise for the last few years called Not the Norm, and we were even able to, it was one that I co-founded with other African women in Denmark. And it's beautiful, it's amazing, and it takes a lot of work. Like all of it takes a lot of work. But for me, I really enjoyed having that experience because it made me realize, it made me see, like I've talked about before, like how you can, from idea, from frustration, can create something that creates community, that validates the existence of people, that inspires the existence of people, and that motivates people to keep on doing the good work and working to change and liberate their lives. And seeing that, because here when I talk, you guys hear my ideas, and some of you, of course, tell me that they help you and have had changed the way you see or do things. But being able to actually create an event where I got to experience that live was so amazing and so enriching, and it made me realize that it's not just ideas are important, and that's how it all started. Like I used to be a girl with ideas who talked to people, and then and then I remember this one person be like, well, why don't you always talk about us, why don't you just start a YouTube channel and talk about it? And I'm not sure I want to be in that field, but then I was like, okay, you know what, it couldn't hurt, and then I started this channel, and then from there so many great things happened. But just to come back and say it requires a lot of effort and it takes a lot of energy, and then on top of that I'm navigating my own life with ups and downs, with challenges here and there, with moving. You guys know, you followed me since I was in Copenhagen, then I went to Brazil, and now I'm in Lisbon. So all of those things have an effect on how you see the world and the energy you have to put in. And I would also say aging, because I feel like as I get older, there's one thing I refuse with every blood in my fiber, and it's when I was younger, and I've always more or less been like this since I was young. Like I've been like, something ain't right, and I don't want to just put a bandage on it. I want to understand why it's not right so that we can actually change it from the root. And I remember like being young and being told, oh, you're young, you're an idealist, but life will calm that down. And I was like, well, thank you for cursing me with that idea. But they're all, and I never want to be that to young people. Like, I'm like, use that, you are where you're supposed to be, the energy you're supposed to have, and how awful it is that older people feel it because their light has been down in the passion of the things they fight, that they're like, oh my God, just calm down. You're not going to change much anyway. You do know that all of these things that have changed or improved come from the fact that little people building on each other's fire, you know, from the age, like maybe I started some fires when I was younger or where I am now, and then maybe at some point my fire slows down, but then we have kids coming to take on that fire. So I see it more as it's not just about me, it's what I'm adding to, it's the bucket I'm filling up, it's the journey I'm carving out, and it's beyond me. You know, like there is that African proverb: if you want to go, fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together. And I really see activism from a decolonial perspective as that I don't no longer, and this was very important for me, I no longer see it as all of these things are on my shoulders and I need to do something, because I felt like that as a kid when I was younger. But the more things I realized, I'm like, oh my God, I need to stop doing that. I need to, and then you felt like there's so many things that you felt responsible for, and it was only when I got old and I sat down with myself and I was like, you didn't cause most of this crap. You didn't cause almost any of it. Like, what about we actually have a more compassionate approach to the causes we fight for and how we engage with them? And that's when I also negotiated with myself the whole idea of the 70% sanity rule for myself, that whatever I care about, I'm going to keep it. As long as I'm doing 70% is good with me. Some things I'm closer to 100, some things I'm just hitting 70, and that's okay. But I made myself a spectrum of sanity, because I knew if I felt like I need to be 100 on the way I feel about the environment, I need to be 100 on the way I feel about women's issue, black women's issue, I need to be 100 on the way I feel about how we raise black children, I need to be 100 on how I feel about animals and the environment. Like, just, you feel like you could go crazy, and no one person is made to have that burden on themselves, because no one person actually created all this mess, and especially as the new generation or the younger generation or the people in the youth category, shit being bad. Like, we just showed up here and we're like panicking, trying to clean people's messes, and you're like, you have to remember, I didn't make this mess. What I can do, number one, is educate myself as best as I can to make sure that I'm not adding to the mess I've found in the existence that I'm a part of. And then number two, make an effort to add to the positive direction that I would like these things to change into. And don't do it as just a once in a lifetime, but for me at least, it's important that I have a lifestyle that is aligned then with the things I want to change. Because then at some point you don't even think about it anymore. Like I don't think about why the majority of my clothes are secondhand anymore. It's like just that's what I do. And now I'm so lucky that there's more options even to buy ethically. So it's even easier, especially being in Europe, like that's so much easier. And then there is the whole idea of, okay, what kind of content do I create? I'm more aware of that. So when I create, I come from that space as well. Like how do I add, the creations I do to that idea, to those things I believe in? And I think, so basically what I'm saying is, as an African person who's aware of, even when I think about my own country, like Uganda, there's so much issues going there. Like my mom was like helping me stay informed because she's also very active in supporting. If you don't know, if you're not Ugandan, like we had an election earlier this year, and there was this amazing candidate called Bobby Wine. He used to be a musician from the ghetto, and he just has a really, like, he's the voice of the young people, the people who want change. And we've had this self-elected government for years under the rule of Museveni. It's a whole other political thing that you might not know because that's not your country. And this is also part of the video, why I wanted to make this video. It's that idea of, so I have friends from other parts of Africa, and I have issues in my own home country that I try to highlight and I try to share about and I try to support. And then of course, then my friends have, and I'm like, okay, yeah, so let's also bring awareness to that. And then you learn about that, and then before you've even solved this one issue, there's another issue you're adding to that awareness. Oh, then I need to be aware of that. Before you know it, there's so many people busy making life miserable for people. If you're trying to keep up with that, you'll never stop. You will never be done being informed, bringing awareness, making change. Do you understand? Like, it's impossible. And the faster we learn this, and the faster we learn that, I'm invested in change, but I'm also accepting of the fact that maybe a lot of the change that is going to happen, that I want to see happen, I'm only going to be a raindrop watering the plant. Do you understand? Like, but at least I'm putting in my life force into where I want it to go, right? And accepting the fact that I want to do this because it makes sense to me and it's the life and world I want to leave behind for other people of my experience or of my existence. But knowing perfectly well that I might not sit under the full tree that I help plant, and some parts of it I do, and I've had experience. I'm not saying that nothing I've seen, nothing I've worked towards, or all actions or causes I've supported have actually come into fruition while I'm still there. There's still a lot of things that constantly inspire me to keep going and keep believing that things are getting better in some degrees and getting really shit in that some degrees. But I also feel like we are at such an important part of life because it's easy to see everything going on and think this is the worst time ever because things are just getting worse and worse, right? When you talk about freedoms, when you talk about the overreach of governments, and when you talk about how people are becoming so demotivated, and which is also not true, because I feel like because we're seeing the bigger picture and we're seeing all these people in the same bed, I feel like it's also creating a bigger movement, which I see as hopeful in some degree. But of course, if you're just watching the news, if you're just watching one horror after another horror of what's going on amongst Black people, amongst humanity, amongst nature, amongst just violation of just simple human freedoms and rights. Like I was like the other day watching, I didn't even finish it. I was like, this makes my my club boy. So I stopped, which is also self-care. I was like, that's too much. I'm not in this space right now to watch that thing, so I'm gonna stop. But it was basically talking about I know this conversation has existed, I think, a few years ago, like 9 years ago, when they were talking about selling water, like privatizing all water, all natural sources of water. And it's some rich white man behind it. Like, no indigenous person somewhere is like, you know what would be cool? If we stop the rest of humanity from getting water and privatize. It's always people who have overprivilege their lives so much that they're actually actively looking for issues to cause. And it's so exhausting because it's like you fix one shit and then like they're out there making more crap. And it's infuriating. I also want to make a video specifically on that subject, like how rich white men think that the world is that playground and the rest of us are just pawns in it. And by rich, I'm not just talking you and your restaurant that you own or business. I'm talking rich people of white men of big power. And yeah, I'm gonna name it exactly like that because when you look at people, when you look at the whole thing about Davos, the economical forum meeting and how they talk about the world, you see the kind of people who think that they have the power to talk on behalf of the planet, the whole planet, and think of what is best for them because they sit there with their computers and algorithm and think that they have the right to dictate and decide what's going to be the future of humanity. And it's like, it's amazing. It's like fascinating that here we are, years after imperialism, which we are all supposed to agree was wrong, colonialism, which we are all supposed to agree is wrong. But then we have this new form of like technocracy and the rule basically of self-elected experts and political experts, you know, whether it's in science or psychology or environmentalism, like just it's exhausting, but I'm so happy that more and more people are realizing there is a freaking club and most of us are not in it. And the more and quicker we realize that, to the degree of it's not about putting new people in leadership, it's about making sure this freaking system can never resurrect itself. Does that make sense? Because I'm not for all those small bandage solutions. I don't want a black person doing the imperialism or soulless capitalism. I want like radical revolutionary change, and that's where I'm putting my 2 cents in. I'm more invested and interested in the ideas that want to uproot the system and destroy it and rebuild it differently. And I know that we're not supposed to say stuff like that, like destroy. You're supposed to say, I want reform, because who does that make comfortable? The people who will give you crumbs when you're asking for something. They're like, okay, she just wants a piece of the cake. I thought she wanted to demolish the whole factory. Could you imagine? She just wants a piece of cake. Here's your piece. And you're like, oh, progress, we got a piece of the cake. No. Anyway, that's a tale for other days. So basically, what is important when we talk about the longevity of activism, where are we, 22? The longevity of Black activism, for me, is about also finding your own lane, something that feels true for you, something that you can sustain on a longer path, you know. And for me, like I said, integrating your courses into your lifestyle, whether that is getting a degree in it, working in it, volunteering in it, making businesses for it, or just in a way that you just are a part of it. It's not just something you go and protest on the weekend, but you about that life. For me, even with my holistic sessions that are focused on introducing people to holistic living and healing from a decolonial perspective, like that for me was a way to put together 2 things I really care about, like decolonization, which for me is just basically questioning the framework we exist in and questioning the worldview that dominates the one we live in, and we think that it's just neutral because it's the only one we could imagine. And helping people find ways of healing, which also includes unlearning, deschooling oneself, and basically reclaiming one's leadership over one's life so that, again, you can be a part of radical change that is not just asking to be part of a broken system, but knows that if you can ask something of someone, and if they have the power to give it to you, then obviously they have the power to take it away from you. And what are you going to do to make sure that the power you get and the power you have is power that is sustainable for your life and that you can pass that power on to other people? So basically, I feel like that's my lane, and I do it, of course, like I said, in my holistic sessions, which I've mentioned here before. But if you're ever curious, you can always check out my blog, Bloom Baby Bloom. I'll try to link it under here before. But even like when I wrote my book, it was from that lane of healing and unlearning and decolonization through sharing of my own personal journey, which is an ongoing journey because I'm always learning as well, like growing. And the social enterprise I co-founded and been a part of for the last, I think, even 5 years. Was it 5 years already? Oh my god, I think it's almost 5 years. And I would really love actually to be part of other social communities, like social collective communities that where we are together from a cause working on something. Anyway, so just doing all those things, having my channels, having my podcast, having my blog, even my artwork, like the art I do, is also infused with that, but from a place of like I kind of separate the two things of like here I try to talk about the things that are more about like the mind and the way we think about things, the way we experience things, but also the world's views that dictate how our lives are managed. And then in my other platform names, I might try to show how I apply that in my life from a place of grace and holistic living and holistic healing, and how I include my heritage and understanding and decolonization into creating a path that is unique to me. So I think that's also important, that you're not performing activism, but rather that you find a way to align it with your life and the things you do. And that gives it a longer standing as well. At least that's what I've noticed in my life, because I don't need to think about it as much. But I did, like in the beginning, be like, okay, how do I actually align things? How do I work? What do I talk about here? What do I create here? Like, where do I see this going? What is the path I'm trying to build for my work and the things I do? And where am I trying to add my power and energy to, you know? So I feel like if you find that it won't be as challenging, it's still challenging, but it's not as challenging because that you've eliminated that element of feeling like you are a go and start. No, you're like, okay, I care about that. That's important to me. How do I include that in the way I work? Of course, there's the whole thing of just unlearning toxic behavior and unlearning anti-blackness and learning colonial mindsets and all these things I put just for me so I don't pass it on to other people or the way I do things. And even if that's all you managed to do with your own little life, you've done a great job, because you came into this messed up world and it wasn't your fault that you came in. You didn't ask. I don't know anybody who asked to be here, but you are. But now that you are here, you can just make that, okay, my goal is I'm going to learn as much as I can and relearn things that are harmonious with my values and with the communities I live in. And yeah, like I'm not just doctrine that I took on because I was told, but actually makes sense to me, you know? So another thing I wanted to talk about, that with the on-rise of social media, which is also both a good and bad thing, but it's also all about mindfulness. Be really aware of the platforms you follow, and because a lot of platforms like build their whole audience on shocking and letting you know of bad news happening, and they don't really know that we're already a burdened people, and it's not fair on a burdened people just to be constantly informing them of more burdens and more bad news. Now, I think this is more a thing of balance, because it's not even that don't talk about it, don't pretend this is happening, but at least balance it out with what can you do. Like, well, I'm not going to just share, like, and I've repeated this several times on my channel. It's something that from the beginning I'm like, this is important to me. I want to share things from a place of that can inspire someone to get into action, to ask themselves, what can I actually do about this, rather than just creating things for the sake of creating it for shock value, for another thing for us to be enraged by. And especially African people, like I've noticed, like I have friends with African moms, and they love to send out bad news, awful stories. Like sometimes my mom will send me videos of like a woman who has 10 kids and her husband was beating her, like from Uganda, and and she sends me the story, and I'm watching it, expecting it to be like, oh, this is the lesson in it, or this is how this person is doing better. And the story is just about, no, I'm just telling you that story. And I'm like, so you were just watching that story, like, you need to see this story. There's no call to action, really. There's no This is the lesson I'm learning from this. So what I'm saying is that, at least for me, I know like of course sometimes things are just shitty and we're sharing because hey, this is awful, this is what's happening here. But let's be mindful, like one to one, like don't send things to your friends, to your family, especially in this time when people are already struggling a bit mentally. Okay, I don't know about you, but I'm just saying I'm putting in a lot of energy to stay balanced, and especially like not being able to visit the people I love as easily, like that's really like affecting me. And so I know that for myself, like I have to be actively balancing my curiosity that wants to learn and like yeah, wants to learn, but also because I'm curious, like what is this about? And also the balance of like, oh, but you have the mental capacity to welcome that, and that's a lot of heavy energy. And you already watched that other documentary movie, or you already scrolled through the slides on Instagram that left you a bit off. So maybe not today. Let's save that for another day. So just basically managing how much stuff you engage with, and don't feel pressured if people send you stuff and be like, I need you to support me with this, or like, can you please bring awareness to that, it doesn't mean you don't care because you're not caring about everything. It's inhumane to expect people to care about every single cause happening in the world today. And never in our human history have we existed when you know so much about what's happening around the world, like, and you can't switch it off. You are right here in freaking, I'm in Lisbon, Portugal. I don't think I've heard anything really particularly happening here that I was like enriched by, but most of the enrichment I have are things happening in Myanmar, are things happening in Hong Kong, things happening in Tanzania, things happening in Uganda, my own home country, things happening in Ethiopia, things happening in Congo, ongoing shit that's happening in Congo. And there's just so much crap constantly happening. So what I'm trying to say is that going back to my previous point is being mindful about our approach to the longevity of the F's we give. Because what I'm afraid of, what I think could happen, what I'm trying to be mindful within myself is sometimes I wonder, like, will there come a point where I've extended my care or the way I'm affected by all these things that burn my fire to change or do something about it, to the point where I'm just burned out. Like, I don't care about anything, anyone, anywhere. Like for me, that's such a scary idea, and it's so much more important for me to think about. Even if I'm gonna burn a little candle the whole way, but at least I can go the whole way with my candle, rather than becoming a big fat flame and caring about everything, and then at the end I have nothing left. Like, I'm in it for the marathon, and I hope you guys are too. Like, do your part and go to sleep, meditate, take a shower, go for a walk, drink your water, laugh, watch some comedy. Yes, even if the world might burn someday, do your part. And then when it's your time to peace out, you'd be like, well, at least I didn't add to as much shit as I could have added. I made an effort to do less of that. So that's okay. That's the best I could do. And really in this wild, wild world where we have to actively re-educate ourselves after being educated. Who would expect anything more from you? So to just my fellow Black people, and also just to say the reason also I wanted to talk about this, I've been seeing a lot of activists, particularly white activists that I've followed around over the years, who burn out so fast because their whole idea is so black and white, and it's all about, it's very strong, it's very, and I'm not against radicalism, but I could just see it. I'm like, dude, that's stressful. You're not gonna make it through. That's your perspective and idea is stressful, and I can sense it with the way you talk about it. And then they come out, they're like, oh, I can't do it anymore. Like, I feel like I've given up. I don't care anymore. I don't have it in me to care anymore. And that breaks my heart. And it's not just, of course, white people that go through these experiences. A lot of people of color as well. So let's have more conversations about like long-lasting change, and efforts of change, and passing the torch on to our younger generations. Generation Z is coming up with a lot of fire and energy, and I'm here for it. I'm like, Mama's a bit tired, but I appreciate your effort and I want you to just go full circle. But remember, this is a marathon, you know? I'm not saying we can't have changes today, but in your mind, don't do all that because you think it's gonna change tomorrow. Do it because you're like, if it does or doesn't, this is where I'm putting in my 2 cents. Because that a little change in how you see it will be the factor that keeps you going. Like, yeah, I might be gone for a few months, but I'm gonna be back. You know, I'm gonna regroup, reset, record. um, Anyway, guys, that's the video for this month. And yeah, I hope at least I'll see you next month. I'll do my very best to see you next month in another monthly video. Besides that, stay well, do your best, put in the effort where you can. Don't overstress about the things you cannot control. Manage the content you engage with when it comes to things you care about. And always ask yourself, what can I do about this? Or am I just self-harming mentally and emotionally, just learning things to be mad and be mad for mad's sake, you know? Because we need that energy, we need your energy putting in the work, you know? And sometimes, I'm not saying that's always bad, do that, because I do it, but just be mindful that the fact that you have a bucket of energy and F's to give, and be careful where you give them, or you might run out before you run out of your life, you know? Anyway. And I also say that because I have heard of much older activists who are just over it. They're like, I used to be such an idealist, I don't care anymore. Like, I'm like, oh my god, like, how do I not become you? Help me, you know? So let's help each other so that we can be oldies that still show up to things and still speak up and still write the damn books and make the damn videos and make the same damn radio stations and the art that matters and the movements and the communities. Like, let's just keep it going, you know? There's more and more of us, so I'm quite sure that you don't have to carry the whole world on your shoulders, basically. Anyway, I'll see you in the next video. Do take care. Remember to stay kind to yourself specifically. And as always, but don't take no shit.